Obviously, it was absolutely the wrong thing to say, and it wasn't a kind thing to say. And I knew that the same evening. Hence, after I'd calmed down, I took my dog for a walk, came home, deleted the tweet. I honestly didn't think anything more of it until a whole week went past. The judge said in his sentencing remarks, I know you've got a young daughter, I know you've got an ill husband, I know that you still very keenly feel the loss of your son, but I don't care. Here's 31 months. You're not safe. Because the minute you don't agree with something they do, they'll come for you too. So don't for 1 minute think that you're safe. So why are you supporting this? Because it could happen to any one of you.
This episode of the Free Cities podcast is brought to you by Veritas Villages. Now, Veritas Villages are freedom-oriented, energy self-sufficient luxury communities designed for people who want to enjoy peace of mind and real freedom in today's unpredictable world. Join a community of like-minded neighbours who value privacy and independence in a place where you can use Bitcoin, including for the purchase of your property. www.veritasvillages.com/free cities for more info, and in the meantime, enjoy the conversation. Just to start with, I suppose it might be an idea to sort of summarise what happened. I'll briefly say it, and then you can fill the gaps in. You basically wrote something on social media, Twitter, X as it's known now, consequently deleted it because you thought that was a bit naughty.
Yeah.
And you ended up in jail, and you were sentenced to 31 months.
31 months, yeah.
And you're just like a mum from...
I am. I'm just a mum and a wife from Northampton. Yeah.
Right. This is what I find so...
small town in the UK.
This is what I find so astonishing is, because, I don't know, the free speech debate, I don't know about you, but I didn't really think about free speech until recently, last few years.
Yeah, I probably agree. I didn't either. Well, obviously we've always been under this illusion that we have free speech in the UK.
Have we though?
Well, clearly not.
Well, no, but I didn't. Because I know Americans, and I know
they have the First Amendment,
yes,
though, which is a massive protection for them, don't they? Haven't they?
But I mean, I wouldn't have said that something we talked about as kids, was, oh yeah, we can say whatever we want. But obviously, right now, we kind of know that's not true, and you really do know that's not true, and you can see. I was just. There's been some ridiculous statistics out recently of people
arresting 50 people a day.
Whatever. So why don't we start with let's hear your story first, and then we can go into the nuts and bolts of what the hell's going on.
Yeah, so as you said, it was the day of the Southport massacres. I'm sure everyone knows what they are now. A day where some awful young lad walked into a community centre where there was a Taylor Swift dance class going on in the holidays and massacred 3 beautiful children and injured many more. And like most people, I was absolutely, distraught by the situation. I do think it's the biggest atrocity of my lifetime, and I think as a mother, it makes you think, Jesus Christ, am I going to drop my daughter off at gymnastics or a dance class next week? And is some crazy person going to go in and do that there? What has this country become when we can't even, pack our children off for the day, in the summer holidays to something that would have been to them one of the best days of their life at that age, a Taylor Swift dance class, all these little Swifties, and their parents never get to pick them up. I mean, it's just the most horrific thing for those parents to pack their children off and never get to pick them up. I mean, unfortunately, I lost a child when he was 19 months old, it resonates with me even more. I understand what that feeling is like, and I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. And I just think it's incomprehensible, like you said, to pack your children off to a dance class and never get to pick them up. So yeah, I made a tweet on that evening. I think it was around possibly 6:30. It might even have been later than that evening. It wasn't very nice.
Can I read it out?
You can read it out. I'm not allowed to.
Is that right?
No.
You're not allowed to read it out. Well, you can tell me whether this is true or not, because I was struggling to... It's hard to tell whether it's real or not. But I mean, so mass deportation now. Set fire to all the fucking hotels full of the bastards for all I care. If that makes me racist, so be it. Is that?
No, that wasn't. That's very doctored.
Is that right?
Yeah.
I tried my hardest to find the real thing.
So let me think. Without saying the bits that. So the first bit is right.
Mass deportation now.
And then it said, and take your treacherous MPs with you. My heart breaks for those parents knowing what they'll have to endure.
So that's made up. That quote.
Yeah.
So
what's happened? Between me writing the tweet and now, is mostly via the mainstream media. They pick out the bits that they'd like to use for their narrative. Because actually, if you read the whole tweet, the horrible bits at the beginning, and then it says, "For all I care." There's no instruction there to carry anything out. There's no instruction to incite anything. It then goes on to say that I blame the MPs and the establishment for what's happened, because I do. And then it then says, and the last bit that says, and if that makes me racist, so be it. Because, and I put that bit because I know and knew at the time, even back then, and it's worse now, in the UK, if you have views on immigration, illegal immigration, that don't align with, say, other people on perhaps the left, you're instantly a racist. You're a racist, you're a bigot. It's a really boring argument that they've got now. They don't have an intelligent debate in them. So they just say, you're a racist, you're a racist. So if you have a problem with all these unchecked illegal immigrants coming across, you're a racist. That's what you're branded as.
Do you want to hear something crazy, though? That quote that I just read out, this is me cross-referencing with AI, right? And it says, literally verbatim, the wording reported in court coverage and major reporting is.
It does, because this is what they did. They cherry-picked the parts of the tweet that made it sound
But the swear word wasn't even in it.
Oh, no, the swear word
was it?
The swear word is.
Right.
But the tweet, oh, God, yeah, me and my swearing.
I thought they made that bit out.
No, that definitely came out of my mouth. But obviously it was absolutely the wrong thing to say, and it wasn't a kind thing to say. And I knew that the same evening. Hence, after I'd calmed down, I took my dog for a walk, came home, deleted the tweet. I honestly didn't think anything more of it until a whole week went past, until it all blew up and I realised there was going to be a problem.
Did you have many followers at that time?
9,000 and something.
So you were a bit of a tweeter anyway, were you?
Yeah, I was always on Twitter.
What in what sense?
Mostly politics, current affairs, that kind of thing. I mean,
and that was just something that just happened. You're a mum who tweeted a bit and got a bit of right.
I mean, 9,000. I don't think 9,000 is masses, to be honest.
Well, you're absolutely right. I think you need 300,000 to be an influencer.
An influencer.
Yeah. But still, I mean, it was enough that your tweet showed up on the radar of the what was it, Scotland Yard or something like that. I don't know
about Scotland Yard, but it was definitely the local police. But you'll never convince me that it wasn't actually a political takedown of my husband, because for those that don't know, and they say it enough, I am the wife of a Tory councillor. Right,
but a councillor though.
But
that's not big.
I know, but they carry on like it is, and you would be shocked at the absolute just violent awfulness that goes on at low level council. They carry on like they're in the House of Commons. They really do.
So you mean that at that level another councillor
I think it was a collective group of councillors. Long story short, my husband took Labour's seat when he won his seat, and he's not your typical, like, on paper Tory councillor. He's just a normal guy, wasn't born with a silver spoon in his mouth. He's just a generally nice guy, just trying to do well by people and people in his local area. And they didn't like that, they didn't like that. And they tried their best to take him down at every opportunity. And I think they saw this and they were like, bullseye, his wife's a racist, as they kept saying, that's, and poor Ray, my husband, just got so much grief from it,
So you don't think it came from a high level? This is
infighting
in local politics?
I 100% believe it came from kind of local politics level, infighting. The left kind of saw it as a real good opportunity to. Otherwise, why would you constantly refer to me as a Tory councillor's wife? I don't think the BBC, for example, have ever done an article or ever done a piece on me where they didn't refer to me as the Tory councillor's wife. And I just think it's not necessary, is it?
So come on then. A week after you tweeted and then got remorse and took it down, what happened?
So I took it down the same evening. It wasn't like a week later. I took it down the same evening. I thought, no, you can't write that. That's a really awful thing to say. I'd calmed down. The red mist had descended. And carried on with normal life, carried on making, everyday tweets that one does on Twitter. And it was the Monday after, exactly a week later, I saw something on Twitter one morning, the Monday morning, along the lines of, look at this Tory councillor's wife, she's a racist, she's a childminder, this, that and the other. And then as the morning went on, more and more of these kind of tweets appeared, almost like it was like a hit job, so to speak, and it was, every single tweet was, look at this Tory councillor's wife. And they were like tagging in the council, the police, Ofsted, because they knew they'd obviously done their homework, they'd done their homework, they'd found out who I was, they seemed to know a lot about our family. And yeah, every single tweet that morning, and I was like, oh gosh, now I'm going to have to fess up to my husband, because I hadn't even told him that I'd written such a thing, because I just wrote the tweet, thought better of it, took it down, didn't think anything more of it. So then I had to say to him, look, I'm really sorry, but I wrote this tweet. It's come back, to bite me. They're now kind of dragging you into it. He had a page on Twitter at the time. They were like tagging him. And I don't think I saw one tweet that morning and over the next 48 hours that didn't refer to my husband and me being a Tory councillor's wife. So it became quite clear quite quickly that it was all about politics. I don't believe to this day that the people that are outraged by what I said are outraged because they genuinely are upset by what I said. It's just a political takedown and point scoring. It's just point scoring, they're not really, this is my opinion, I don't believe they're that offended,
Well, I think some people really want you to suffer when you do something they don't 100%, like. I think absolutely. And I don't mean even necessarily politically minded people. I just think vindictive
And even
people.
now, the way people come for me on social, it's not like that in real life. Real life is very different. People are very kind, actually. But on social media, they still come for me. And I just can't get over this. I say to people, like, regardless of what you thought of what I said, whether you thought it was the most outrageous, abhorrent thing ever, I did 12.4 months behind a prison door. I was away from my daughter and my family for 12.4 months, and I'm now under probation until March 2027. So even if you do really believe it's the worst thing that anyone's ever done, do you also not believe that I've done my time and, I've paid for my mistake? But they don't. They still come. They still say, you should have got 10 years, lock her back. And probation now, they constantly, week in, week out, people call in probation. Lucy said this on Twitter. Lucy said that on Twitter. She said violent things.
Is that why you're not allowed to repeat?
Yeah, I'm not allowed to repeat that.
But is there the reason behind that? Because that would be you saying it again.
So they say that would be they class it as not of good behaviour. So it would be not upholding my license.
Are you sure you didn't say too much of it here that I need to cut some out?
No, I don't. No, it's fine.
Okay. So you got what? The local police knocked on your door?
So that a week later, obviously a whole kind of 48 hours of this, all the Twitter tweeting went on and all the tagging. And then I thought, I just had an awful feeling. And at this point, my husband was saying, Lucy, they're not coming for you. You're just, a childminder, a housewife. You're a nobody. They're not coming for you. Calm down. And my friend who's a lawyer was saying the same thing. They're not coming for you. Calm down. Anyway, they did, didn't they? So it was the Tuesday afternoon. So a week and a day after I'd made the tweet, 2 police officers knocked on my door and arrested me there and then, seized my phone and took me straight to the local police station.
What did they say when they arrested you? Were they polite? Nice?
Ish. Yeah, they were a bit stupid.
So we're arresting you for what?
It was Public 19 of the Section 19 of the Public Order Act for racism, and I was like, "That what?" Was
it racism or inciting?
Well, I don't. But the actual charge is a public order charge. Section 19 of the Public Order charge. That's what the charge is. There's no charge to incitement, and there's no charge to violence. It's actually a public order charge. arrested me, took me to the police station that evening, questioned me, and I had the duty lawyer there, and I told her what had gone on. And funnily enough, when I was explaining to her and my situation, she said, "You know what, Lucy, you've put that really eloquently. I think you just need to go in there and you need to explain to them what you meant by your tweet, why you put it, and the fact that you deleted it, and you're not proud of it." So that's what I did, thinking that I'd done the right thing. Well, that wasn't the right thing to do, was it?
But what would there have been a right thing to do?
I don't know. I think I would have gone no comment. I think would have been my best thing, because they couldn't have twisted anything that I'd said in that interview where I thought I was being, quite innocent. So they actually did release me that night without charge. They didn't charge me. So the same evening they released me without charge with bail conditions not to post on social media. Didn't break those bail conditions, and gave me a date in, a couple of months down the line to answer bail. So again, I went home thinking that was the end of it. They'd scared me. I mean, if you've never been arrested, just being arrested and put in a cell for a few hours is enough to terrorise anybody. The punishment is in the process. That's enough to make sure nobody ever did someone like me.
Talking about like a cell with a little seat.
And, like a full-on,
metal
toilet and
oh shit, really?
That kind of thing.
In the police station.
In the police station, yeah. I mean, they were very nice to me, but still. So that's enough to kind of terrorise anybody into never saying anything on social media. No, it's not funny, but it would have been enough to make me think twice ever again about posting anything like that on Twitter. It's enough to make you think, put it that way. And so that was that. And I thought that was the end of it. And no, that Friday morning, so I was at least Tuesday night, Friday morning, about 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning. It was before 8 o'clock. I was putting the bins out in the street, and I'd just had a shower. My hair was still wet. And I saw this police car coming down the street, and I just thought, I just knew. It's not unusual to see a police car in the street, but I just knew it was coming out. And they got out the car and they were like, "Lucy," I said, "Yeah." And they were like, "We're re-arresting you." But they arrested me for a second time as opposed to asking me to come in again. And I thought, what's this all about? I haven't done anything. I haven't posted on social media. I haven't broken my bail conditions. So when I got there, it was all a bit cryptic. And the same solicitor was on duty, and she'd put in a complaint saying, "Why have you re-arrested her? At worst, you should have brought her in for a voluntary interview because you've already arrested her. She's already on bail." "Oh, these are new charges." She was like, "What?" Well, anyway, they'd got these handful of tweets that they weren't prepared to show the solicitor at this point that were allegedly racist.
From you, from previously?
So they'd gone through my Twitter. Well, they hadn't. So Mr. Khan, love him, who the original complainant was that picked up. So the original complainant that went to the police, that the police acted on, it turned out he was frothing at the mouth that I'd been released and wasn't very happy about that.
The Mayor of London you're talking
about? No. I don't know. I mean, Khan's a bit like Smith,
sorry.
Isn't it?
The way you said it then,
all I know is the complainant was called Mr. Khan, but I don't. Mr. Khan's like saying Mr. Smith, really, isn't it? It's a very common Asian name. So he'd apparently gone back to the police on the Tuesday, having found out I'd been bailed, and was very angry about that, and provided them with a load of other stuff from my Twitter. And some of it had gone quite far back, like maybe 2 years. He'd obviously been watching, so for a better word, my account for quite some time. He was obviously a fan,
Perfect.
And he kindly provided some more tweets to the police. And it was funny, actually, because I had this Lee Anderson, one of the Reform MPs, tweeted yesterday about the definition of Islamophobia. Now, one of these tweets was exactly that. I was arguing with somebody saying it's not a word, it's a made-up word. Well, that was one of the tweets that they had and claimed was racist. Another one was, I'd called my friend a word that rhymes with do as you likey after he'd called me a brummy C word. And it was quite clear that it was two friends I've having. He's a friend in real life, I see, So they were like, well, that word's racist. I'm like, well, not if you're calling your friend it as a joke, it's not, There was another tweet that happened to be a few weeks prior in our town. There was a guy that had been caught masturbating over children in one of our local parks.
Lovely.
Yeah, and he was an illegal immigrant. He was a Somalian, and I'd commented on this post and said, Somalian, I guess there are a lot of them in that area, and with an emoji of a sick face, because obviously, is it not pretty sick that an adult man, a grown man, is masturbating over children in the park? I find that quite sick. Anyway, they twisted that to say, well, you're saying the Somalian is sick. Well, no, I'm not. I'm saying it's sick that there's a grown man masturbating over children in the park. And this particular post happened to originate from Tommy Robinson as well. And a friend of mine had tagged me in and said, be careful, Lucy, I know this is near you. So, they sat in their interview going, do you know Tommy Robinson? And I was like, what is this all about? And the solicitor was like, everybody knows who he is, move on. They were scraping the barrel, but then they were trying to say that this was a different case. This wasn't linked to the original tweet and the original arrest. These were new tweets and this was a new arrest, of which I was never charged for, by the way. It was only ever that one tweet. So yeah, they re-arrested me on the Friday, kept me in, charged me that Friday evening. So they'd arrested me around 8 o'clock the Friday morning. They remanded me around Hopper State that evening, charged me
with
Section 19 of the public
order
for just the original tweet. Yeah, just that one tweet. None of the others. And kept me in. And then I was put in front of a magistrate's court via video link the Saturday morning. Told I wasn't able to have bail. There were no grounds to remand me on. I wasn't a flight risk. I've never offended before. All of the standard things that and you ask any police officer, they sometimes sit on the phone and beg the CPS to remand people that they think are a danger to society, and they're like, no, there's no grounds, you can't remand them. But they, funnily they remanded me, kept me in custody, shipped me off to Peterborough prison Saturday afternoon. I was back in Crown Court Monday afternoon, because they said it couldn't be heard in magistrates court because it was too serious. It was what we call in this country an either or case. So it's a charge that can either be held in magistrates or can be sent to Crown. The telling thing about that is a magistrate can only give a sentence of up to 2 years imprisonment, and they very often suspend that if it's a first offence. Crown starts from 2 years imprisonment, and they don't suspend that. So I think that was quite telling in the beginning, that they were adamant that my case and all these cases like these that were linked to the Southport riots. I debate that mine was linked to the Southport riots. There had been no riots when I made that tweet, and there wasn't any riots for a good week. After I do not accept that my tweet was incitement, and I do not accept that I was in any way, shape or form encouraging people to go out and riot and burn down hotels. And in fact, when they did start doing that, I was mortified, and I tweeted as such, and the police and the courts had that tweet to say, I was saying, please stop doing this. This is not the right thing to do. We need, articulate, intelligent conversations with the right people. You're playing into their hands. So at no point did I ever condone the riots, and say, go out there and do that. So I do not accept that I had any part to play, these idiots going out and throwing bricks at police officers and setting fire to things. I don't, that wasn't my doing, and I don't accept that. I do accept the tweet was wrong. I do accept that I shouldn't have written it, but I don't take responsibility for what happened afterwards.
Did I hear that correct? So you didn't go back home? No.
So
you went straight to jail?
So I was arrested. I was charged on the 9th of August 2024, and I finally returned home August the 21st, 2025.
Bloody hell.
No day release, no nothing, no tag, nothing. Everything was blocked with me, everything.
So you literally just went to jail?
Went to jail and never came back. Yeah, walked into a jail and came out 12.4 months later.
That's insane.
It is insane. It is insane when you think that people are doing horrific things, raping children and getting suspended sentences, and then I wrote unacceptable words online and I got 31-month prison sentence.
But they didn't take into account the fact that you never done
No, there was
before.
lots of mitigating circumstances in my case. The fact that I had a young daughter, the fact that I had a husband that was seriously ill, the fact that I'd lost a child, and that of course it has some bearing on how you feel and how you react when things like this happen. There was lots of mitigating circumstances. I have got a diagnosis of PTSD. There was lots of mitigating circumstances in my case, of which no mitigation was given. And when I tell you zero, I mean zero. So the judge said in his sentencing remarks, I know you've got a young daughter. I know you've got an ill husband. I know that you still very keenly feel the loss of your son, but I don't care. Here's 31 months, literally. So no mitigation was given to me whatsoever.
Why do you think that was?
Because they wanted to make an example of me. Because unfortunately, I do believe I ended up, because I was married to a Tory councillor, it hit the news. It was a story that I couldn't believe, the things I was seeing on national news when I was in prison about me. I was like, seriously, I'm nobody. I really am nobody. And I'm all over Sky News and the BBC like I've just, like I'm the guy that's gone in there and massacred the children. I'm sure I saw my face more than I saw his. I'm not exaggerating.
The thing is, though, and I'm quoting that Times article where they did some freedom of information stuff to get out how many people have been arrested, and they came up with a figure of like 12,183.
It's crazy.
But that was in 2023, right? But so why? There's a lot of examples being made by the sounds of it.
There is. I wasn't. Don't get me wrong. I wasn't the only one. There was. Poor Peter Lynch, the guy, a similar thing. He was holding a board in the street, and he got arrested and sentenced, and he ended up committing suicide in prison. He never came home. As far as I'm concerned, the government's got blood on their hands for that one. There was lots of people arrested at the time for things that I would debate, prisonable offences. But they were trying to make an example of people. They were saying, if you disagree with us and you take to the streets, this is what's going to happen to you. And to a degree, I understand that. There were people in the streets rioting, burning things down. They had to get those people to stop, didn't they? But you can't possibly put someone like me in that category. Somebody that was just purely upset about children being killed, to somebody that's probably never even been on Twitter, going out in the streets with knives and fighting and all of the things and throwing bricks at the police and all of those things that they did. You can't possibly put those two things in the same bracket. But randomly enough, the people that were taken to the streets causing the violence were getting less of a prison sentence than I got.
Arguably, the reason they picked on you is because you are so not the normal kind of person.
I mean,
as an example.
Absolutely. They wanted to make an example of me, because it was like, if we can do this to her, we can definitely do it to you. That was the message they wanted to send out. And for a long time it worked. For a long time people were very careful about what they posted on social media. I know that lots of my friends were just sitting there waiting for, they were busy deleting tweets, the things that weren't even that bad. But, at this point they were like, God, who knows what we can and can't say anymore. And, they were deleting tweets, and they were adamant that they were going to get a knock at the door and all of these things. And I think that their plan worked short term. But I think now if you go on Twitter now, people are still so angry about the way the UK is going. They've gone back to pretty much saying whatever they like, and to hell with the rightly or wrongly, to hell with the consequences. So yeah, I think it worked short term. Long term, I'm not so sure that it did.
I'm desperate to hear what it's like just going to jail.
Scary, really scary.
I used to be a news photographer years ago, and one time I was taken to, I think it was Bristol prison, and the warden, just for a photo shoot, and the warden said, "Do you want to go in the cell?" I went, "Go on then." And he shut the door behind me, and I got a really bad feeling, a really death, that feeling in the pit of your stomach. Like you say, there's the toilet at the end that had no seat on it. There were 2 beds. I mean, were you sharing a room?
No, I never had to share a room, luckily.
Describe what it's like to just walk into a cell, though. And you knew how long you were supposed to be in there for, right?
No, not at this point. I wasn't, obviously, I had no idea. I had no idea what was going on. I was just going to prison until I was in court again. And I had no, this is the problem, I had no understanding of the system at this point. You know, it's been a massive learning curve because I've never had any, you know, brush-ins with the law or the judiciary or anything, so I didn't know how the system worked. I did put another bail application in whilst I was in prison and in the early days, and I was absolutely adamant I was going to get that bail, and so was my solicitor, but no, I didn't get that bail again.
So how long was it before you knew you were going to spend more than a year in jail?
I was sentenced on the 18th of October, 17th or 18th of October. So I got arrested on the 9th of August and I was sentenced on the 17th of October.
So during that time, you were assuming that you were probably going to get out?
Yeah, everyone thought I'd get time served. You know, they've made their point now. Come on, this is silly. And that was the consensus across the board, you know. The people I was in prison with, the officers, the solicitors, you know, just people in general were saying, oh, she'll go home. There's no way they're going to keep her. They've made their point, you know. And then people, when I came back from, I did it via video link. When I came back, people just couldn't believe it. I think that I was having them on. They were like, no, you're going home. I was like, I'm not. They've just given me 31 months.
Did that, you know, did that affect you badly?
Oh,
yeah, or were you already used to it by then?
I mean, I was expecting a custodial sentence. That much had been made very clear, which was another, you know, flaw in their system. The judge in Northampton had already told me I would be serving a lengthy custodial sentence before I even got to my sentencing, before they'd even allegedly looked into mitigating factors in the whole story. But there you go. And yeah, it was
What's it like being in jail when you're just
it's
a woman who's
you know
just been
what?
a mum and
once you are settled, it's not as bad as you think. When you first go, it's absolutely terrifying. You know, I just thought I was going to get beat up and bog washed and all of these things, and actually the women really aren't like that. I think women's jail and male jails are is a very different ball game. I think generally women just put their head down, want to get their sentence done. A lot of them have children, a lot of them have families. They're just more worried about their families on the outside than they are about, you know, themselves inside. I certainly was. So they just and the women are very good at supporting one another in prison. I mean, I spent most of my time at Peterborough prison, which is a private jail actually. I spent a few months at Drake Hall up in what's it called?
I don't know. I didn't even know we had private
Stafford.
jails in the UK. What does that mean? A private jail as opposed to...
Yes, it's not run by HMP. It's run by Sodexo, actually, that one. So it's a private jail.
Are the private ones better?
Yeah, a lot better.
Ironically.
Even the jails are better, yeah. And I think...
oh, God.
I don't know. There was... it sounds an awful thing to say, but I found at Peterborough the calibre of prisoners was better than Drake
Did
Hall.
you make some friends?
Yeah, I did. You know, it sounds crazy because if you'd have
told... It doesn't
told...
sound crazy.
You'd have told me before, you know, if you'd have told me to be friends with a cocaine dealer before, I'd have been like, I'm not associating with them, you know, like I'm not turn my nose at. But obviously when you go to jail, you meet these women, you hear their stories, and, you know, some of them have been in really heartbreaking situations, and everybody has got a story to tell. Very rarely do you find a woman in prison that's just not a very nice person. And there are some, of course there are people that have done horrific things, but overall they have been failed by the system. There's, you know, very often a violent man involved, or somebody, you know, they've got caught up in, they're vulnerable women, you know, that have been dragged into, or young girls that, you know, have grown up in care and have just, you know, been promised this amazing life if they do X, Y and Z, you know, vulnerable and gullible. And it's really, really sad, really sad. So the people in jail are not what we're led to believe, you know. They've actually been failed by the system.
Did you meet anyone who you considered to be in a similar situation to yourself, i.e., You shouldn't really be in jail.
Oh, loads. Probably 80% of those women. I would have let 80% of those women out of the door, and I would have been quite comfortable that you and I would both be safe on the streets. I mean, my take on jail, having been there, is that you should only be using prison to house anybody that is a danger to society. So if you could comfortably let them out on the street tomorrow and know that they wouldn't reoffend or they wouldn't hurt anybody, there are other ways to deal with those people, you know, in the forms of community service, you know, rehabilitation. There's 1,000,001 ways you can deal with people other than slamming them in jail, away from their families, away from their children, and with no rehabilitation, because don't let anyone ever tell you there's any rehabilitation in prison, because there is not in the UK. There's not the money, there's not the time, and there's not the resources. It doesn't happen.
Did you meet, what was the most heartbreaking story you heard in there then?
Well, there was women in there that had hurt children. I was in quite a few, like, there was this one awful girl, her name was Chelsea, I can't remember her surname. Her and her boyfriend had murdered the baby, and they'd pushed this poor baby dead around in the pram for days, and when they were arrested, they were in Wetherspoons laughing and left this poor baby in the bath dead. And, God. I mean, and this is the problem with women's prisons, because they're not categorised. You are in with everybody, and I don't think that's fair. Why should I have been in with somebody like that? You know, like men, that would be like a Cat A prison or a Cat B prison. So they're kind of all similar crimes, similar offences are together, so to speak. Whereas women, because the women's population of prison is a lot smaller than males, they're all just bunged in together, generally dependent on the nearest prison to where you live, for obvious reasons. Peterborough just did actually happen to be my nearest prison. So yeah, I met some... I stayed away from people like them. They do tend to be kept on kind of different wings, what they call the vulnerable persons wing, because they're exactly that. People don't... Not that I approve, but people don't take kindly to... people that hurt children and things like that in prison, and they do take it upon themselves to kind of take the law into their own hands, so they're very protected. But then I met, I don't know if you know, and it's quite a funny story, Virginia McCullough, who she's from Essex, and she murdered her mum and dad and kept them at home for 4 years and lived in the house with them. So she put one in the wardrobe, her mum in the wardrobe, and bricked her up, and the dad, she made like a tomb in the kitchen and bricked him up.
Didn't they smell and stink? Apparently
not. She can tell you all the stories of how she got rid of the smell and what she bought on the internet and stuff, and she lived with them for 4 years until she got caught and arrested. But if you met her...
So she was in prison with you?
Yes, she was in prison with me.
What, you just meet these people at lunch and stuff?
Yeah. Oh, God, she was trying to buy my leggings off me one day for vapes. I said, I don't vape. What about if I make you some jewellery? Then I said, no, thanks. I like these leggings.
Oh, my
God. Yeah, you do, because you see them in, like, even if you're not on the same wing as them, you'll see them in the library, you'll see them at work or chapel, or, you know, the communal places that people, and passing in the corridors and stuff. And Virginia made it her business to talk to everybody. But it's insane, really, because... she was actually quite nice.
Did it toughen you up? I mean, presumably everyone knew that you were just the woman that got unlucky and ended up in jail. Didn't they want to kind of step to you or whatever and try and beat you up? I don't know.
No, actually. Occasionally, there was a couple of lovelies that did, but they would just wanted to fight everybody, you know. More at Drake Hall when I was there for a short time than at Peterborough. It just wasn't like that at Peterborough, really. The women just weren't like that. I'm sure it does go on, but I just kind of kept myself to myself, and I quickly learned how to play the game. Somebody said that to me very often, very early on. Prison's a game, and the quicker you learn to play the game, the easier.
What's the game?
Just stay out of everyone's way. Don't get involved. I mean, prison's very political. It's very... it's a bunch of women living together. You can imagine how bitchy it gets in the prison politics that go on. But I stayed well out of that. I had, you know, bigger things to worry about than, you know, who was sleeping with who on what wing and whatever. There's a lot of that goes on, pussy politics as they call it in prison. What's the saying? Straight at the gate, gay for the stay. That's what they say.
Oh my God.
But overall, they were lovely to me, and the general consensus was that it was outrageous that I was even in there. And, you know, at first I think some of the women were a bit like, oh, she's a bit posh, you know, but they, you know, they got to know me and they realised that I wasn't. And I actually took a lot of especially the youngsters under my wing. I was, you know, I was kind of the mum of the prison, but not I ran the prison, but not in the way that you might think. You know, I was the one going, come on now, we're not fighting today. Come on, we're not kicking their head in today. Let's go and have a cup of tea instead, you know. A lot of these youngsters who know nothing, that's just their life, isn't it? They don't know how, they can't articulate themselves, so they just kick someone's head in, or they kick off at the prison officer.
Are you different now, do you think?
Yeah, but only in the sense that I think I've learned a lesson, and I have more time for people that have ended up in prison. I would have been, and I openly tell people this, that person that said, well, you know, they're in prison, they've committed a crime, they should be there, I don't see the problem. But having been into that system and having lived that life and having met these women, I know that not to be true now. You know, most of them do not deserve to be there. They're almost there because it's the easiest thing for the system to do with them instead of actually help them. And you know what? Making a mistake or doing something bad doesn't make you a bad person. There are women in there that have messed up, that have done something bad, ended up in jail, but they're not bad people. And there's a reason, rightly or wrongly, that they've done what they've done, and in their head sometimes it's justified, and you can kind of see their point. You know, you can't agree with what they've done, and I used to say that regularly. I used to say, you know what, I don't agree with what you did, but I can see how you ended up doing it and how you got into that situation, and I'm not going to hold it against you. So yeah, I think it's made me a much better person in that sense, that I'm a lot less judgmental now towards people, and I just think, you know, some of these women I stay in contact with and I would class as friends now, and you know, and they're people that got longer jail sentences than me, or you know, on paper did worse things than me.
It's funny you say people said they didn't agree with what you did, which is an interesting thought, really, because I don't think I care what you did. Like, do you see what I mean? Like, do I agree with it? Like, I don't really care whether you tweeted something.
I'm a bit like that. If I saw something that I saw on Twitter that I thought was outrageous, I'd be like, prat, end of, you know, scroll past. It wouldn't affect my day. You know, like, I wouldn't be so outraged by it.
But do you think there's any truth in the fact that people see, take your tweet specifically, do you think anyone saw that and went, yeah, fuck this, let's do something? I don't know. Do you think that actually happens, or do you think people just do stuff? Like, you know what I mean?
Well, you think? Are you asking me? Do I think anyone acted upon it?
Yeah.
No, I don't. And there's no evidence to suggest, you know. And it's that old saying: did your mum never used to say to you, if your friend jumped in front of a bus, would you?
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
it's
if
that.
If I tell you to jump out the window.
We are all responsible for our own actions, aren't we? You know, I could go and stab somebody now and then say, but he told me to. It doesn't make it right, does it? But
that's the thing. That there is an idea that people can succumb to things like that. The question is it true or not? I mean, like, say, you mentioned Tommy Robinson earlier. He's an interesting example because he does garner a lot of attention now. And if he said it, if he said something that was, like, quite incendiary, I mean, maybe he does. I don't know. I don't follow him. But then, if you're talking about millions and millions of people, a very small percentage of them might use that as a reason. I don't know. I don't know enough people.
Possibly, but I think that they would do that anyway. Does that make sense? The people that went out in the streets and took knives and weapons and fought people and threw bricks at police, they're the type of people that would do that anyway. They were just looking for an excuse. That's the way I see it. 99% of us would never dream of acting in such a way, no matter how angry we were.
So they just saw the news.
And there's a big difference between saying something and doing it. You know, I'm going to punch loads of people in my life, but I've never punched anyone in my life, you know.
Yeah. But I mean, what you're saying is that everyone saw the news. The way you acted on it was tweeting. The way someone else might act on it is go down to whatever street where they can see on the news some shit's going down. Let's go and join in with that.
And that's exactly what did happen. And unfortunately, we all got put in the same category, which again, I don't necessarily. Well, it's not even necessary. I don't think it was right that somebody was in the street. There were, for example, there were cases of people being in the street and just maybe filming or holding up a board that got the same repercussions as somebody that was fighting and abusing the police. The two aren't the same. You know, the law quite clearly states we have a right to protest in this country as long as it's done in a way that's not violent. So how is standing in the street filming or standing in the street with a board warrant an arrest and going to prison? It doesn't, does it? But they were treated to the same merit that somebody with a crowbar or a knife and fighting people in balaclavas were. The two just aren't the same.
Do you think that why are crazy things like this happening? Did they always happen, or are we living through this time where weird things are happening? Because this is insane. You're telling me.
I think the latter. I think the government have always been a law to themselves. So whoever we're in, we have to toe the line, don't we? And it's always been one rule for them, another for us. That's never been any different. The elites and the globalists have always ruled the world, haven't they? And it will never change. But I think with this particular government, it very much it is about control. And I think for example, in the situation that I found myself in and the people that were arrested over the Southport riots, the government had lost control and they didn't know how to get that control back. So they had to make a serious stance. But they, it was how they handled it was wrong. Keir Starmer made a speech very, very early on, before any arrests were made, to say anybody involved in this, be it online, be it in the streets, however which way, you will feel the full force of the law. You will be going to prison, you will get arrested, and you will be remanded. Why could he not understand that people were upset and emotional and angry that 3 children had been massacred? Why could he not come out and say, we understand your cross. We understand there's an issue in this country. We understand that we need to fix it, but this is not the way to do it, and we won't tolerate this. Why couldn't he have not said that? Why did he have to come out and tell us all, act like, some kind of communist? You will, and we will do this, and we don't care. He's basically saying, we don't care what you think. We don't care that you're upset that 3 children have just been massacred. We don't care that our country has been flooded by illegal men that have got no respect for women and children. We don't care. That's what he's saying. And that's how I interpret it, and that's how a lot of people are interpreting it.
I think that's how I interpret it as well.
And it's like we're now not allowed to be upset about that. And if you are upset about that, to prison for you. It is the message they're sending out.
Well, it's an authoritarian play, isn't it?
Definitely.
It's just do as I say. There's no...
Absolutely.
Which it could well be a sign of the times. I don't really know. Like I say, without... It does seem a little bit crazy these days. But then again, I think it's fair to say I haven't really been... And I'm not really, don't take this the wrong way, but I haven't really been politically active until recently.
And a lot of people haven't, I wouldn't say I was really until probably the last 12, 18 months. I had my views. I was obviously married to somebody in politics. But again, I wouldn't say, crazily enough, I wouldn't say he's that political. He's just trying to do a good job for the local council, for the area that we live in. I wouldn't say he was that embroiled in the politics of it. I mean, he's had to become, but that's because of this. And I wouldn't say before that I was I knew who I wanted to vote for. I knew who I supported. I knew what I wanted and what I didn't want. And I was very vocal about my political views. But I wouldn't, I was certainly not, out in the streets leafleting and
That's one thing I noticed about authoritarian sort of leaders or governments in general, is in the end everyone becomes an enemy of them, slowly but surely. I mean, for me, you see, it was 2020 and the COVID lockdowns and this kind of stuff. That's what made me much more acutely aware of someone saying, don't do that. We literally
just had that conversation outside. I think a lot of this has stemmed from COVID. I think it never went away. And I think our lives are very different now to what they were prior to 2019, 2020. And I think that was the catalyst, and that's where it stemmed from.
What do your husband think about all this now? Is he still a councillor?
Yeah, he's still a councillor.
He's still there?
Yeah, he's still there.
Getting a lot of hate mail, probably.
No, not at all, actually. Like this obviously, social media isn't the real world. It's a different world, and on the streets, and I mean, I have sacks and sacks and sacks of letters and emails that I got whilst I was in prison from people sending well wishes and love and just, saying how outraged they are for the situation and to, don't let the bastards get you down, all this kind of thing. don't let them win. And, you know, equally he had the odd email saying, you know, Tory scum, you know, that kind of thing, stand down. But overall, again, he's had masses of support, even from people, you know, other Labour councillors that know him, you know, that are his friends, that work with him, that know he's not this person that they were painting him out to be or me to be. So in real life, you know, we've had a lot of support, and the majority of people think this is insane. The whole situation is insane and are quite cross by it. I'm worried for them and their own families that they could end up in, you know, for the grace of God go, for the grace of God go I, you know. I think everybody's generally worried that they could end up in this situation. You know, they look at me and they think, well, if it could happen to you, why couldn't it happen to me? And this is what I say to all these people that are supporting this and these hardcore left, that I say, you know, you're not safe. Because the minute you don't agree with something they do, they'll come for you too. So don't for 1 minute think that you're safe. So why are you supporting this? Because it could happen to any one of you.
Are you tweeting again now? Are you allowed to tweet?
Yes, I am.
And have you become, I'm going to go ahead and assume you have become somewhat of a figure in the free speech movement now?
I think people are quite interested in what I've got to say and my views going forward. I think I've got like 53,000 followers now, so it's not like an insane amount, you know. It's a good amount, but it's not an insane amount. And funny enough, the Americans are very interested in my story, because they just, obviously, that, like I said, they've got the First Amendment, so they just find it really insane that you can go to prison for a tweet. And I think lots of countries, including America, are watching this country right now thinking, what on earth is going on over there? I'm glad I'm not there, you know.
Do you self-censor?
I have to, because they'll put me back in prison. I'm on licence.
But it's interesting, isn't it? Because, all right, the tweet you got called out on was obviously you angry, but you can tweet in a non-angry state and still get put away for it.
Yeah,
can't you?
well, because anything that's deemed to be, I don't know, anything that violent, or even a joke, something that you say in jest, you know, people will ring up probation and say, Lucy said this. And then probation are on my back saying, oh, we've had this complaint because you've said this. I said, and it's a joke. Yes, but, you know, they've taken offence. Really?
Someone calls you up regularly?
All the time. Every week. I think there was a couple of weeks ago, I think they broke the record for something over that I tweeted that they just thought it was madness, absolute madness. Every week I go in there, every other week, and they're like, oh, we've had this come in. Did you tweet this? Yes, I did. What's your point?
Really?
You know, so if I was, and that's being that's being quite careful about what I write. If I wrote what I was actually thinking half the time, even without being derogatory, I think I'd definitely be banged up again by now.
Do you ever think about moving somewhere like America?
All the time.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm in a position where I could go. But currently, because I'm on licence, if I go, the minute I step back here, they'd arrest me.
Really? So
Yes.
if you were tweeting out of America and then they would judge you on British law?
Yeah, because I'm on licence. So I'm on licence until March 20.
What does that mean?
So I have to report into probation and abide by my licence conditions until March 2027.
Right.
And they watch everything I do and say.
So after March 2027, conceivably, you'll stop getting. Well, not in this country.
Joking.
No, but you'll stop getting. For people that don't, Americans might. Yeah, probation happens in America. It's the same,
I think
right?
it's called parole in America. I think it's parole.
This is making sure that you're a good person for a couple of years. Yeah. How long was it? 2 years?
30 in total, 31 months. So,
oh, is that how they work it out? For that,
so
right.
I got 31 months, 40% of that was served in prison and the remainder on licence.
But presumably now, whenever you travel abroad and stuff...
Oh, I'm not allowed to travel abroad.
Really?
I'm not allowed to travel abroad on licence. They've stopped me twice.
What about after...
Yeah, I can go afterwards.
But you still... I mean, I've just filled in a visa form and one of the questions is, have you been like...
Yeah, I was invited to America just after I got out of prison with Nigel Farage. So Nigel Farage went to... and he gave evidence, didn't he, at a free speech conference there, and he wanted me, and that they invited me, and Nigel wanted me to go with him, but they wouldn't let me go.
Really?
No.
So come on then, let's have a positive ending. What's come of it? Like, what's come of it for you first?
I think I've been able to help. I'm in a position to help people that are in a lot less fortunate situation than me, and I understand the system. So I have been able to, and still continue to help people, women that are still in prison, women that are coming out of prison. I think I've been able to make a positive impact on their lives. I really hope that going forward, I will be able to work with the people that make the laws in the prisons and the prison system and try and make some positive change. And I do actually believe the tide is turning in this country slightly. I do think that people are waking up, so to speak, and saying, you know what, this is not what we want. Even people, I know people that have been, you know, hardcore Labour supporters all their life that are going, never again. This is not what I voted for. This is not what Labour mean to me. You know, people don't want this nanny state. They don't want this, authority over them.
Sorry to butt in. Are you saying, because I don't know nearly enough about this, if this sounds stupid, please forgive me, but are you saying that under Labour, this is happening a lot more than it did before, or is this thing?
Did you know anybody that went to prison for social media posts?
No,
I didn't. No, you didn't. This is a new thing. It's been infiltrated. I mean, anybody that works in the police service will tell you now how woke and left the police have become. They're supposed to police without fear or favour, and they're supposed to be apolitical, but they're not. We know they're not. And then I think that got worse when Labour came in, because obviously he's got, Starmer's got massive links into the CPS and into the judiciary, hasn't he? That was his bread and butter before he came into politics. He knows all the right people. You wouldn't have 5 years ago, you wouldn't have even entertained the idea of going to prison for something you said. Now it's a very realistic possibility that you will go to prison for something you say.
I suppose the way I'm thinking about it is I think of it as an authoritarian thing. I don't think of it as a left or a right thing.
But I think it is, because I think that you're safe for now if you're on board with their political views and their... Ricky Jones is a perfect example of that. So the guy that, I don't know if you know about Ricky Jones, the guy about the same time as me, when all the riots and that were happening, he was in the street. He was a Labour councillor, so he had a much more influential position than I did. He was a Labour councillor, and he was, I can't remember the exact words, he was in the street with a board and a microphone, inciting violence and basically advocated to slit people's throats. That's what he was doing. He was also arrested around the same time as me. He managed to get bail, funnily enough. So they did remand him initially, but then they bailed him. They were not entertaining and bailing me at all. So he was obviously able to get out and then seek really good legal advice and look at his options. I wasn't able to do that. We were arrested for similar things, but treated very, very differently. Now, why was that?
But does that happen consciously?
No, I don't think it does. I think it's all by design. I think we 100% are living by a two-tier justice system and a two-tier policing, based on your political beliefs and what side of the spectrum you vote for. That is how it currently is.
But when you were saying that you think the police force has become very left, obviously that's something that's the individuals in the force who are kind of believing. But it's coming down from the powers of that. It's coming down from the College of Policing. There's so many people that you speak to in policing now that say we need to do away with College of Policing, because this is where it's all coming from. I know so many ex-police that have left the police now that just say to me, I'm ashamed of what the police force has become. Why we're not out there getting real criminals? Why are we arresting people over words? That's not what that's not what people signed up to the police force to do. We signed up to catch criminals, not people that say naughty things on the internet. You'll never convince me that the judiciary and the police has not become politicised, and it is very much left-leaning and controlled. How do you think that changes then? Because it strikes me that it's not enough to just have a different ideology in power. because it's people whose job it is to be in the police, who've got ideological beliefs and they happen to be police and blah blah blah.
I think also it's that they're scared for their own jobs though, so they might not necessarily agree with that might not be what they want to do, but we hear time and time again, of a policeman, person, whatever you're allowed to say now, being on a job and they're told what they are and they aren't allowed to do. They're no longer allowed to make, use their integrity and make use their own judgment and make their own call. They're told, no, you must do this and you must do that. They probably don't want to do it 9 times out of 10. They probably think this is nonsense. But if they don't, they lose their job. They've got bills to pay.
The guys the police you've had interactions with, did you find that they were apologetic about what was going on?
No.
Why do you think that was?
The original, I think they are in the police force as a whole in Northampton, because obviously it's a small town and I get to hear things. But the officer that originally arrested me.
Be careful about what you're about to say.
Yeah,
I just saw you. I don't want you to go back to jail.
She basically had a new job. It was her first week is her new job as heading up the hate crime department.
Right.
So this is what we now have, hate crime departments in the police. So bearing in mind we're told they're overstretched, they haven't got the resources to catch criminals and rapists and murderers, but they've got the resources to set up a hate crime department. So I think that she was it was all our Christmases come at once.
She got the big hate crime nick. Right, let's finish, but I want to finish on a positive note. Most positive thing that's come from it for you?
I just think
you seem very happy. You seem very content. You don't seem
and
like...
people hate that, they want me to be bitter, and I'm not, because yes, it was shit what happened to it, but it was more shit for my family. They suffered more than I did. I'm telling you now, my 13-year-old daughter suffered way more than I did in prison, being out without her mummy. And of course I'm bitter about that, but I'm not. I am not going to let these people win. I feel like I've got a job to do, and people have said to me, do you not think this has happened for a reason? And I'm not a massive believer in everything happens for a reason, because some things should just never happen. But maybe it did. Maybe it did happen for a reason. Maybe if I can make a difference to just 1 or 2 people's lives during my life, then that's a good thing, isn't it? And if I can make a difference in trying to turn this whole thing around, that can only be a good thing. Even if I can only make a small difference, that's good enough for me. And I am content, and I think that's what people don't like. Like, I have a nice life, I have a nice husband and a nice family and a nice, I'm not buying it, we're just normal. We're just normal people, but in lots of ways we're very lucky. We've had our own stuff to deal with, of course we have, but I'm not going to let people beat me, and I'm not going to let people make me bitter. I'm not having it.
Fair enough. I'm with you on that one, and I just think it's an astonishing story, really, because I think a couple of years ago, people were talking about these kind of things. People going to jail for a tweet, blah, 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 and you just don't believe it. You think, nah, that's not true. But it is true.
It is true.
And
definitely.
There's a lot of them.
I can vouch for that.
Yeah. No, but I just think it's amazing, and I'm very thankful that you came to share your story. Thanks, and good luck. I mean, obviously, we all want free speech.
We do.
And I got no idea how you...
It's a non-negotiable, isn't it, really?
I don't know how you make it happen, to be honest, other than... Because, I spend a fair bit of time in America, and when you see something as powerful as the Bill of Rights and the Constitution, you realise,
maybe we need one of those.
Yeah, of course we do. But how do you get that? That this is the...
A government that's prepared to listen to the people that voted them in.
Yeah, but the mechanism of government we have here is it's at its worst, I think, stage.
But I think it can be done. I think some days I have these days where I think we're doomed, just move, just go to a different country. And then other days I think, no, we can do this. There's enough people now that are realising what's going on, and are prepared to fight for the country. I think we're turning the tide slowly, but I think we are.
Wow. Thank you, because I'm very black-pilled on the country at the moment. I'm very despondent, looking around.
Most people are. I mean, what on paper, what's to be, everything seems to be going the wrong direction, doesn't it?
Yes. The only consolation is that normally things rebound from the worst position, and the dawn after the dark.
Yeah, sometimes we have to hit rock bottom, don't we, before we come back up.
Well, you certainly sound like you might have done. I don't know whether it was even rock bottom. You seem strangely happy and funny and joking. But
again, and I've said this all along, the worst thing that in the world that can ever happen to anybody had already happened to me.
Yeah.
So nothing can top that. So this was bad, but it wasn't as bad as that. And I've already lived through the worst thing and will do till the day I die. Lived through the worst thing that could ever happen to any parent. So this is just nothing in comparison. Like I said, it had more detriment to my daughter than it did.
Do you ever think about going into politics? I mean,
maybe.
Okay, right.
I don't know.
Watch this space. Well, you know
Who
what
knows?
It's like. You've been thrown into a situation.
Yeah, I just feel like it's a bit of a silly saying, but it makes me laugh when people say, and they take the mick when they say, "This, you didn't choose this life; it chose you."
Yeah, but that's kind of what it seems like. You've been given if you want to spin it in the positive, for sure, you've been given an opportunity to be something. But I'm not. Anyway, I'm not a big fan of politics, to be honest. Well,
it's horrible. Let's face it.
Yes.
Well, it's nasty. It's a nasty business. Is
Yes.
politics. It is.
It is. Anyway, Lucy, look, you've got
Thank
to go
you
on
so- I
stage
do,
very
yeah.
soon. Well, no, you've got a bit of time.
I will.
You've got a bit of time. Thanks for coming in.
Thank
It's brilliant
you.
speaking to you. Thank you very much.